Good afternoon, everyone. This is Connor. I'm going to be briefing on my collections plan for the Iranian nuclear program. I have a couple slides, 3 slides that I'm going to go through. We'll go through them now. And at the end, I'll open it up for questions. On this first one, our overall mission is between January 2024 and January 2027. We're aiming to reposture the United States intelligence community to focus on 3 main things. The first being the nuclear weapons production facilities that we already have knowledge of. The second being logistical nodes that the Iranian regime uses to move nuclear material in and out of the country. And then the third thing being operations, activities, and investments that fall outside the scope of normal statehood nuclear activities, such as Iranians funding their nuclear program with proxy organizations or Iranian-aligned militia groups or other malign activity across the globe that the Iranian regime is using to fund their nuclear advancement. Overall, the participants of this collections plan are pretty broad. It encompasses several agencies from within the DoD, independent agencies such as CIA and ODNI, and then other agencies such as Department of Energy, Homeland Security, Department of State, and then OFAC from Treasury that I have tasking for in this collections plan. Overall, this collection plan seeks to reprioritize portions of the United States intelligence community towards the pacing Iranian nuclear threat. Overall, in this collections plan, we're going to look at known nuclear facilities. I have a couple NAIs to look at, and that will be a focus point of some of the intelligence community. We're going to look at key logistical ground and sea lines of communication throughout the CENTCOM AOR. And the why now for this, why are we reprioritizing the U.S. intelligence community? Following the 2018 decision for the United States to withdraw from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran has begun ignoring limitations on its nuclear program across the board. And we've received recent reporting that highlights their decisions to not only increase their knowledge of uranium enrichment, but also ignore some of the restrictions that have been in place for quite some time. If we decide to do nothing, our risk of inaction is that we have the potential to embolden Iran further. This will cause regional tensions throughout CENTCOM and potentially at the strategic level. Iran is going to be able to continue the refinement of their enrichment facilities so they can shorten the time frame required for nuclear breakout. And then the Iranian regime is going to be able to capitalize on our inaction in their messaging and information operations campaigns to bolster their influence throughout the Middle East. Slide. All right, so we should be looking at priority intelligence requirements. So these were what I used to develop out my tasking for the various members of the intelligence community. I have 5 of them. I'll touch on these briefly. The first one is how is Iran going to utilize their proxy network that they have set up via the Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces Logistics organization and the Iranian-aligned militia groups in order to fund and equip its nuclear weapons program in the next 3 years. These Iranian-aligned militia groups, namely Badr Corporation, Asib al-Haq, Kataib Hezbollah, operate in CENTCOM, and they are an action arm of the Iranian regime. And they use them to smuggle drugs and things of that nature. And I'd like to heighten the U.S.'s focus on collecting on those groups specific to funding the nuclear program and how it's tied to the Iranian regime receiving funding for the nuclear program. PIR number 2 is how is Iran planning to proliferate logistics needed to sustain its nuclear weapons program and known enrichment facilities throughout the Middle East between January 2024 and January 2027. PIR number 3 is what opportunities do we have in order to mitigate their influence as it pertains to their nuclear weapons program. What I'd like to see here is have the intelligence community develop options alongside the DoD to develop counter messaging that goes and highlights what the Iranians are doing at the strategic level. Basically saying, hey, look, here was the guidelines that were in place, and since 2018 and since the United States has left the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, here's what Iran has been doing. Basically just highlight that and publicize it. PIR number 4, what conditions must be met in order for Iran to conduct escalatory actions as it pertains to its nuclear weapons program in the next 3 years? What I'm looking for with this one is in the next 3 years, what actions would be required for what pressures would need to be put on Iran so that we can avoid those for them to go through their process of reaching nuclear breakout. And then PIR number 5, what is the nature of Iranian deception planning as it pertains to its nuclear weapons program? The Iranian regime as a whole does a lot of asymmetric warfare and gray zone activities, so their nuclear program is no different. There's a high possibility that when they are planning things for their nuclear program, it's merely a part of a larger deception plan. And this is something that the United States needs to collect on in order to develop a further understanding if some of the actions that they are taking and that they are publicizing about their nuclear program are merely done as a distraction so that they can do other activities that are not actually the nuclear program. So if we understand more of their true intent behind the nuclear program, then we can develop an understanding if it's a deceptive activity or not. All right, slide. So now we should be looking at collections plan. Mission remains unchanged. Here listed, I'll talk through these. I have the key Department of Defense tasks and then other key agency tasks. For the Department of Defense, I'm looking for NSA to develop specific mission profiles, increase their analytical weight, and then develop cyber vectors in order to sustain, persist, and collect on Iranian nuclear weapons proliferation. U.S. CENTCOM is tasked, J3, J2X, they're going to do a systemic review of flexible response options and develop sources with placement and access to known Iranian proxy logistics companies and organizations. DIA is doing something similar. They're going to be developing sources with placement and access to named areas of interest listed above. So looking for DIA to develop specific sources in the 5 NAIs that I have developed. NGA is refining imagery in coordination with the National Reconnaissance Office on the NAIs, as well as border crossing and roadways, where Iran is known to move some of these materials into the country. And then lastly, for the DoD, the Joint Warfare Analysis Center is conducting a detailed analysis of the power infrastructure of the facilities found within the named area of interest found above. So we're looking for the Joint Warfare Analysis Center to conduct a comprehensive review of power infrastructure in Iran so that we can develop an understanding of how the Iranians are powering their facilities and then work backwards from there in order to develop an understanding of potential weak points that we could get after. All right, for other agency tasks, CIA has a couple, looking for them to develop sources with placement and access. Counterproliferation Center is going to be increasing their analytical weight and personnel devoted to the weapons program as a whole. The Directorate of Operations developing sources with placement and access to Iranian nuclear weapons program. And then any and all commercial and private sector relationships that the CIA has, they're going to be tasked to develop sources within those with some businesses that might have ties, either 2 or 3 degrees of separation from the Iranian nuclear weapons program, if those exist. For Department of Energy, they're doing a study similar to JWAC, however focused on their current uranium and plutonium enrichment capabilities. And then lastly, this is an important thing to highlight, under Treasury, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, is going to levy sanctions and blockages, as they have been doing, against any Iranian-aligned organizations and businesses that have a nexus to the nuclear weapons proliferation program. Also looking for OFAC to provide updates on a quarterly basis to the ODNI. ODNI in this, not listed on the slide, but ODNI in this collections plan is overseeing the overall tasking and the collections, and every entity in the collections plan is having a quarterly review meeting that ODNI chairs. So that's kind of the key points there. On the map chip, 5 NAIs that I'd like to call out. The first one being the Arak Research Facility, and then NAI 2, Isfahan Uranium Conversion Facility. Number 3, Fordow Uranium Enrichment Facility. Number 4, Natanz Uranium Enrichment Facility, and then NAI 5 is the Bashir Nuclear Production Facility. All of these NAIs are areas that Iran has been known to produce uranium, enriched uranium, plutonium, things of that nature in the past. They're in developed areas, so I'd like to continue to refine those as NAIs and then task out some of the entities that I mentioned in order to collect specifics and develop more sourcing in those specific areas, namely HUMINT and SIGINT, so that we can get a more up-to-date idea of what's going on and some of Iran's intentions as it pertains to them producing weapons-grade uranium, and plutonium. That is it for my brief. Right now you should be on questions and comments slide. I'll pause here if there are any, and if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to reply down below the video. I appreciate your time watching this. Thank you.